Hello, I'm talking to you today about Wwise and Elias middlewares for use in game audio. This video focuses primarily on the merits and limitations of both middlewares, ranging from their accessibility to their applications to their industry relevance, and I've also done a practical project using both of the softwares so that I can provide a first-hand account of using both the programs. I had three main aims for the practical aspect of this project. One was to compare the learning experience and accessibility of using the two softwares. Two was to compare their functionality, and three was to look for any areas in which either or both of the softwares felt most valuable to either an individual or a studio. To provide a fair comparison of the two programs, I used the same set of assets in both projects and aimed for them both to have two basic functions. One was that sections had to be able to loop continuously until told to stop or change, and two, certain parts had to be able to have variations which could play, stop or change randomly while still remaining in time musically. The experience of implementing the assets into both programs generally was pretty smooth, and the basic functions of both softwares were very similar, but there are obviously some notable differences which I have broken down into three sections. The first section is design. Perhaps the most obvious difference between the two programs are their designs. At first glance, Wwise can feel very cluttered, and the minimalistic colour scheme can make it very difficult to distinguish between different parts of the program. By comparison, Elias' simple interface, in my opinion, is definitely its biggest asset. There are a minimal amount of different panels, and the colour track headers make it very easy to navigate. There are a few different tabs at the bottom of the centre window, but all the different windows stick to a very simple layout, making the program very easy to learn and explore on first use. Although Elias' simple interface is much less intimidating than Wwise's upfront approach, it means that key information can be much more difficult to find and therefore fix. When I was having trouble with my assets, it took me quite a while to find out that the issue was caused by the sample rate of my project. The fix was nice and easy, but the hardest part was just finding the settings in the first place. What added to this problem was that I couldn't actually see the waveforms of my different segments in Elias. This meant that I wasn't sure if my issue was caused by the assets I was importing or the Elias project itself. The lack of waveform could also make editing and combining assets quite tedious. Because the information wasn't readily available, I spent a lot of time auditioning assets and in the end just opted to have my door open in parallel to my Elias window. It meant a lot of flicking back and forth, but being able to actually see a sound quickly saved me so much time. Wwise also seemed better equipped just to deal with this kind of editing in general because of how easy it was to add automation curves and filters to assets that were already within the project. One of my favourite things about Elias, though, is the record button because it makes sharing works in progress really easy. The next section that I want to talk about is the accessibility of the two programs. Audiokinetic provide a wealth of information and resources on their website, including 4 different Wwise certification programs, documentation, videos and sample projects. Although the information is readily available and easy to understand, Wwise uses a lot of key terminology which can be quite similar and difficult to remember. When explaining how to set up music in Wwise, you can find yourself having to give very complicated instructions like this one.
Create a music switch container and, in it, put a music playlist container housing 3 music segments. Each music segment should contain 3 step music tracks with 3 subtracks and 2 random music tracks with 2 subtracks.
Are you shitting me?
However, once you've learnt them, the specific terms can actually make it really easy to communicate how things need to be set up. Elias arguably doesn't need as much documentation because of how simple it is. The tutorials are very quick overviews and at times can actually be more confusing than just getting stuck in. I found the level system quite difficult to grasp in the tutorials, but it clicked almost instantly once I actually started using the program, and I ended up really enjoying it. Having the manual readily available on the Elias website is very useful, and the quick start guide was really good for holding your hands while you're initially getting started with the program. And finally, I have the specialist functions. The biggest difference that I noticed between the functions of Wwise and Elias are shown in the way that the music transitions. Both systems let audio tails ring out from previously played files to avoid harsh cuts, but Wwise seemed better equipped to deal with upbeats and pre-entry material by using entry and exit cues. The cues are very easy to set up, but it does mean that you're often transitioning between full sections of music as opposed to instruments being able to transition individually like in Elias. Elias also has a system called Smart Transitions, which is very powerful and very cool. Elias can scan your audio assets for any points of silence and use these to transition between parts. This makes your music feel less like 8-bar blocks and more like a full fluid piece. Once I'd finished testing the two softwares, I decided to look into their industry relevance. As an established player in the industry, Wwise also has a lot more shipped titles to its name and can be exported to a variety of platforms including VR. Elias does, however, work with middleware such as Wwise or Fmod, or as a standalone music solution, so Elias doesn't necessarily need to be seen as a competitor, but could just be an extension or specialist tool for composers. When I was looking at game audio job specifications, I found that most adverts were looking for experience or at least knowledge of Wwise, but I couldn't find a single job advertisement that mentioned Elias as either necessary or desirable. This observation is backed up by the game audio industry surveys from 2016, 2017 and 2019, as their data shows a decline in the use of Elias and an increase in the use of Wwise across all of the areas that they surveyed. But from my research, I do have a few theories about what could be preventing Elias from breaking into the industry. The first thing I found were the license fees. Although both softwares are free for non-commercial projects, Elias licenses are at a minimum more expensive than Wwise licenses for commercial projects. As a smaller company, price is a very difficult thing to compete on, especially when that payment could be being delayed until the release date of a project. Both Wwise and Elias offer revenue share options, but at varying percentages. There is a possibility for Elias to be offered at a smaller revenue share percentage, and there's no mention of any industry specifics like with Wwise. So this could be an attractive offer for projects that may fall outside the scope of the games industry, but still require interactive audio. The second possible problem that I found was Wwise's industry usage. For an indie studio looking to compete with AAA and bigger budget projects, having access to the same or similar tools as the bigger players wherever possible gives you slightly more assurance that your project will be able to compete. Pair this with the multiple licenses and payment methods available, the capability to handle all your audio within one software, and Audiokinetic's known prioritisation of customer service, there's a much stronger case for indie studios to opt for Wwise over Elias.
We've just decided that support is going to be the most important thing and will be a higher priority over releasing new features and so on, because the most important thing is that all the studios using Wwise, they need a functional software, right?
The final possible barrier that I found was the fact that composers are often freelance. Because they're more commonly freelance than sound designers, at the moment Elias just isn't designed for anyone in a studio, so there's no reason for a studio to invest in it, especially when they might already have access to a perfectly capable tool like Wwise. However, Elias are planning to release a new sound design tool, and their website suggests that it could act as an editor and middleware within one program. This could change how many studios pick it up in future, as it could massively simplify workflow and therefore save a lot of time. In terms of areas of usage outside of the game audio world, I found that Wwise is actually being used in multiple industries, including simulation and automotive, mostly because of its ability to handle more than just music. Following on from this logic of diversifying income across multiple industries, I do believe that there is one area in which Elias would excel, and that is education. We recently saw the UK government trying to encourage people into cyber jobs. Elias could act as an ideal way of bridging the gap between the arts and technology by introducing interactive music used in games to younger students without being too daunting. As this is an unexplored area, there would be little competition, and Wwise wouldn't be able to compete at this level because one of its strengths is its complexity, a feature that wouldn't be welcome in this situation.
Yeah, easier than I thought.
My research would suggest that, while its musical capabilities are more advanced, Elias's limited applications and higher price point in comparison to Wwise doesn't provide quite enough motivation for studios to use it. Wwise, while sometimes more complicated and less musically innovative, works well and has a proven track record. Its ability to handle all audio and readily available, more bespoke licenses make it more attractive to a studio from both a budget and workflow point of view.
Why don't you sit this one out?
Elias's venture into sound design could prove to be an interesting prospect for its future in game audio, as this would put it on a more level playing field with other middleware. In addition to this, it would seem that there are definitely opportunities for it to grow as an educational tool due to its simplicity.
Just, take the elevator to the top floor, and then follow the signs.
Thank you.
Based on these considerations, Elias's lack of uptake would appear not to be a reflection on the quality of the program, but rather a reflection on how competitive the audio middleware field is within the games industry.
That was a long one.